Hey guys, welcome back. Never fear the pale threshold. So, I'm not only going to be covering these topics on my channel from now on, but I do feel like it's an important and fundamental part of spirit work, as well as a lot of other, it covers a lot of territory. So I feel like it's important to put it out there. And so today we're going to be talking about alternative messaging and how do you reframe these situations in your mind when you're having delusions or when you're getting really negative messaging about situations. How do you deal with that? Which is important, because we have to be able to function and get on with the rest of our lives. And you can't just be spending all of your time being bombarded by negative messaging, whether it's because of spirit work that you're doing, or gang stalking, or just run-of-the-mill delusions. So it's all about overriding your programming. So I know in my own experience, that's what I'm going to be coming from. A lot of this is based in CBT-P procedure, but I'm also going to be basing it off of my own experience. Again, disclaimer, I'm not a mental health professional, but I felt like this might be helpful. So hopefully it helps people. You'll get like a gut feeling, an initial signaling that something is wrong in a situation. And then what ends up happening is that your brain is going to decode this hostile stimuli and start filling in those gaps. And so you might be getting some incredibly negative messaging, like you're doing the wrong thing, or you're doing this, and this wrong, when really just the whole scenario is something that you need to remove yourself from. And so being able to recognize where you need to remove yourself from situations is going to be super important. The pandemic definitely changed everybody's way of life a lot. Everybody kind of got pulled out of the rat race temporarily, and then we all tried to go right back to it and get right back on that hamster wheel. And but now things are different, and some things are much worse. Some things have the potential and are getting much better. So it's going to be really crucial in this period of time to be able to recognize where that divide is. A lot of things are based in unreality right now. So we have a lot of algorithm-based popularity, things that are not actually liked by anyone, but they're incredibly popular because of that algorithm and how everybody's doing like the same thing. A lot of people are trying to use this to exploit others to varying degrees of success. And the job market, let's face it, kind of a dumpster fire right now. So this is all contributing to poor mental health in people across the board. And people don't necessarily have the resources to get the help that they need. And the healthcare system, I could go on and on about that. But as I've mentioned before, I like to try to keep it positive on this channel. So let's look at what we can all do in our own lives. So a lot of us are left filling in our own blanks. And a lot of people that I've talked to who have been through similar experiences as mine, that messaging has been largely negative. So we need to find ways to flip that. How can we use the gut feelings that we initially get that are negative? How can we spin those in a positive way and get a positive result from that. Mindfulness is going to be a big part of this, specifically the parts of mindfulness where you realize which situations are and are not about you and or meant for you. And then understanding when it's good to allow situations just to pass us by. Acknowledge it and then move on. The flip side to mindfulness, though, because I personally got caught up in this a lot, you can't allow other people's purposes to dictate how your own existence plays out. Like, you can't just be waiting to react to everything else that everyone is doing, which is something that I found myself falling into and really getting hung up by and kind of trapped by. Because even though you want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that they may or may not know what's best in a situation, you also have to have your own plan in place to make things work and make things happen. And we'll get a little bit more into our own purpose and self-direction later. So part of that is maintaining a sense of self, honing in on that, and being true to it. Alternative messaging. So is this the messaging that you're receiving? Is this in my best interest? Now, if it's overwhelmingly negative, the answer is no. The answer is absolutely not. And it's very unlikely that anyone else is getting benefit out of that situation either. So let's figure out how we can take what we have to work with and use it for the betterment of everyone, as opposed to getting very hung up on the negative messaging and don't do this and don't do this and don't do this. Is there something in this situation that could potentially help others? Even if that just means reaching out to someone else about what both of you are mutually experiencing. That can even be a stepping stone to better things for both of you. And of course, you want to make sure that you're not putting your own well-being at risk. So if this is getting too overwhelming and you need to reach out to someone because you feel like you can't handle it anymore, definitely do that. So if I'm getting strong negative signaling, like delusions or misconceptions, or I feel like a particular entity is out to get me, whether that's gang stalking or metaphysical or, a combination, is this based in an underlying mistrust of the person or situation? And how can I go about setting good boundaries and possibly removing myself from that? Are there ways to establish boundaries in these situations to prevent a negative outcome, to keep bad things from happening and improve my outlook on the situation? Sometimes the messaging is very harsh, but it can be useful. Like, your stuff is going to get stolen if you don't lock your house, or if you don't take X, Y, or Z steps to secure your belongings. Your things are going to get stolen. Now, sometimes even beyond the best of our capability, things like that will happen anyway. But you want to make sure that you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's as far as your own routines are concerned. And it takes time to cultivate these things. You have to start and kind of gradually build up. And bad things might happen along the way, and you just are going to have to move on from that and realize that it's part of the process and not like everything falling apart overall. Will it make a big difference long term if I cannot make this situation work out in my favor? So let's look at, like, if you have a job contract and it's a 3-month job contract and you get a month and a half into it and things are really not going well. It would be okay for you to figure out how to leave that job. A lot of times, situations like that, it's a no-fault situation on either side, so they can terminate you at any time, but you can also leave at any time. You're not trying to exploit the situation, but you really want to be involved in things where you're working with others to mutually create an environment in which all of you are able to prosper. So that's crucial, right? And it's very difficult to find in this day and age, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be working towards that at all times, because otherwise things are just going to stay bad. Things will just get worse. There's a misconception, and this is like hoarder, scarcity, billionaire mentality, that in order for one person to have more, another person has to have less. That is absolutely not true. It is one of the foundations of capitalism, and it's based in fallacy, and we need to just throw that one out. I wouldn't say I'm a communist either. I think there are lots of things that have the potential to happen that are not just capitalism and communism. But this is not a political video. This is just trying to help all of us achieve better things in our lives, right? Because often people are able to band together to create more success and better conditions for everyone involved. So that's what we all should be working towards at this time. And I feel like this particular period of time is more primed than a lot of others have been. So now let's talk about reframing delusions and misconceptions to bring out a positive outcome regardless of the circumstances. So let's say a particular person is giving you a bad feeling. And as a result of this bad feeling, you start having X, Y, or Z thoughts about this person that may or may not be true or based in reality. But it's kind of coming from this underlying gut feeling that something is wrong. What you should do is create boundaries with that person. Detach. And of course, use your compassionate, loving kindness anytime you are interacting in that situation. So not getting hostile or creating negative or tense energy. Really just respond with the warmest and most positive energy that you can muster. Sometimes this will change the situation for the better, and sometimes the person will remove themselves because they don't care for that kind of energy, and that's okay too. But also having that detachment so that you're not putting yourself out there in a way that you could potentially be harmed or have a negative outcome come about because of this situation. So an example might be that you really like to go and hang out at this particular sports bar. But what ends up happening is you end up getting drunk, and there's this particular server that you just like hit on relentlessly. And, you know, I'm saying this because none of us are perfect. I want to give you scenarios that might be realistic to your situation or somebody's situation, right? It would be a good time to take a break from going there and find a place to go where maybe the servers aren't as hot, or maybe they don't serve alcohol. Alcohol's not a big draw. and give yourself time to normalize and reevaluate that situation so that you're not getting, like, let's say the negative messaging that you're getting about that situation is that that particular server is very promiscuous and that they are sleeping with everyone except for you. So that would very easily fix that problem. And that's really just one scenario. There are all kinds of ways that you can use this. And I'll leave it up to you. And of course, the example I gave was like less than paradigm, because I do want people to understand you don't have to be perfect. And you don't have to completely change your life all of a sudden. You can make all of these incremental changes and gradually get closer to the place where you want to be and surrounded by the people that you want to have around you. Being helpful, but not putting oneself out by helping. Lots of times we are able to help other people, and this goes back to just because one person has more doesn't mean that other people have to have less. Sometimes you can help people and it really doesn't make a difference in your life at all. It's just kind of incidental to you. You're not expending your own resources, or you're not creating a situation of imbalance. You really, really want to be striving for situations where everything is kind of balanced. But of course, that is ideal and not necessarily based in reality. So let's talk about when boundaries get crossed. So what if, in the situation in the sports bar, for example, the waitress flirts back with you relentlessly because you tip well? You need to put good boundaries in place, which would be taking a break. It would not mean tipping less. It would mean tipping a reasonable amount, but also removing yourself from that situation until everything has kind of cooled off. And you would be able to evaluate these things better, right? And boundaries can be in all kinds of situations. We don't talk a lot about work-life boundaries because a lot of those have been completely thrown out of the window right now. But they should still exist. And a lot of people, hotel workers are getting ready to strike. I heard UPS is getting ready to strike. I heard, and of course there's the writers' strike, and a lot of actors are getting involved in that as well. So people can band together for positive change. Now, unions don't necessarily fix everything, but it is a step in the right direction. This can apply to jobs, can apply to the neighborhood or living situation that you're in, can apply to your family, friends, partnerships, of course, romantic partnerships, even with the government. You need to be able to have good boundaries with politics, because how much does that actually affect the day-to-day life of many of us in a positive way? It really doesn't, right? So it's important to look at these things in the framework of what is it that I, as a citizen of this nation, need, and what is my responsibility to acquire that for myself. So I think I've covered a lot in this particular video in regards to alternative messaging and how to flip those signals that you're getting. Pay attention to the feelings that you get from the messaging that you are receiving. Any messaging. Pay close attention to how it affects your body. And listen to your body before you start listening to the messaging. because your body is going to tell you yes or no immediately. And then any of that messaging, you're going to have to, as I mentioned in the previous video, do research, evidence-based research, experimental receiving of information from valid sources, not tarot cards. We're going to have to actually talk to other human beings and do research with reputable news sources and knowing how to find reputable news sources. But I'm assuming that if you're watching my channel, you know the difference between what I do and what Associated Press does. Okay, I'm just putting that out there. But I think that is going to conclude today's video. I am working on the Rostow cycle from the coffin texts. So I'm hoping to put some more videos like that out soon. It will be a little bit of time before I return to doing divination videos. It doesn't seem like the most pertinent matter right now to be putting out divination videos, especially general ones. So it's going to be a minute on that. But until next time, never fear the pale threshold. And I look forward to seeing you guys again very soon. Please do leave your thoughts in the comments, and please do keep it positive.